The morning air was cold and sharp, and the little town bus stop stood quiet except for the shuffle of a few school kids. Among them was Emily, a fragile-looking girl of 14 with a bright face and crutches supporting her every step. She had been born with a condition that weakened her legs, but her spirit had always been stronger than most. She smiled even when life gave her every reason not to, but not everyone admired her courage. A group of boys standing off to the side snickered as they watched her approach. "Move, cripple." One of them sneered, sticking his foot out. Emily stumbled hard, her crutches flying, and her knees hit the pavement. Her books scattered, and a sharp sting of humiliation spread across her face as laughter erupted around her. The world seemed so cruel in that moment. Her eyes watered not just from pain, but from the sting of being mocked for something she couldn't control. The boys laughed louder, one kicking her crutch a little farther away. "Come on, crawl to it." Another jeered. Emily's lips trembled as she tried to steady herself, but her body betrayed her. Around them, the other kids stayed silent, afraid of the bullies, pretending not to see. It was one of those moments where loneliness weighed more than the fall itself. She whispered under her breath, "Why me? Why always me?" And then, in the distance, the low, rolling thunder of engines cut through the cold air. One rumble grew into many, deep, powerful, unmistakable. The boys looked up, confusion painting their faces as the sound drew closer. Around the corner roared not one, not two, but 99 bikers in leather vests and heavy boots, their motorcycles snarling like a pack of lions. The ground trembled as they lined up beside the bus stop, chrome glinting in the sun, and silence swallowed the street. The leader, a massive man with a long grey beard and a leather vest embroidered with the words Iron Brotherhood, shut off his engine and swung his leg over his bike. His boots hit the ground with a thud that seemed to echo. Behind him, the rest of the bikers dismounted, folding their arms, their eyes cold and sharp as knives, every one of them watching the scene before them. "What did you just call her?" The leader's voice was deep and calm, but it carried a weight that made the boys freeze. No one answered. He took a step forward, towering over them. "I asked you something. What did you just say to that young lady?" The boys stammered, eyes darting, hearts pounding. The tallest of them muttered, "Nothing. We were just joking." The biker crouched down beside Emily, gently picking up her books and handing them back to her with surprising tenderness. "You okay, sweetheart?" he asked softly. Emily nodded, though her eyes brimmed with tears. She had never been defended like this before. Not by anyone, let alone 99 leather-clad giants. The leader stood and faced the bullies again, his jaw tightening. "You see her, that's someone's daughter, someone's whole world, and you thought it was funny to kick her while she's down. That makes you cowards, and in my world, cowards don't get respect." The boys swallowed hard, backing away, but the circle of bikers had already closed around them. One of the bikers, his arms tattooed from wrist to shoulder, leaned in and growled, "How about you try picking on someone who can actually fight back?" Another added, "You lay hands, or feet, on her again, and you'll answer to all of us." The bullies' bravado melted. Faces pale, they muttered apologies, tripping over their own words, before sprinting away as fast as they could, desperate to escape the iron wall of men who had surrounded them. Emily stared in disbelief. 99 bikers stood guard at her bus stop, their eyes softening as they looked at her. The leader smiled, kneeling again to hand her the crutch that had been kicked away. "Don't you ever let them make you feel small. You're stronger than they'll ever be." Her lips trembled. Why did you help me?" The man's eyes softened. "Because once, there was a time I couldn't walk either. Took me a year to stand again after an accident. I know what it's like when the world kicks you just for existing. You remind me of the fight it takes to keep standing." Emily's tears finally fell, but for the first time they weren't out of pain. They were tears of relief, of knowing someone had her back. The bikers stood in a protective semicircle until the bus arrived, engines rumbling low like guardians daring anyone to try again. As she boarded, she turned back to see them raising their hands in a silent salute, and her heart swelled with a strength she hadn't felt before. From that day on, the story spread like wildfire through the town, how 99 bikers had shown up for one disabled girl, how they had silenced cruelty with the weight of brotherhood, and how they had given her something bullies could never take away: dignity. Emily still struggled, still faced hardships, but now, when the world tried to trip her, she remembered that day. She remembered the roar of engines, the wall of protectors, and the voice that told her she was stronger than she believed. And deep down, she knew she was never alone again. The bus stop on the edge of town always seemed colder than anywhere else, the kind of place where silence had weight and every second stretched long. Emily stood there, clutching her books close to her chest, balancing carefully on her crutches. She had grown used to the sideways looks, the whispers, and sometimes the cruel words that followed her like shadows, but that didn't make them hurt any less. That morning she had risen early, determined to face another day at school with the same quiet courage she carried inside her. But the world didn't always reward courage. A group of boys lounged by the bus sign, laughing loudly as she approached. Their eyes lit up when they saw her struggling across the pavement. One stepped forward, his voice cutting sharp through the morning air. "Move, cripple." He stuck his foot out, and before she could stop herself, Emily stumbled. The sharp crack of her crutches hitting the ground was followed by the dull thud of her knees against the concrete. Her books scattered across the street, and a hot wave of shame flushed her face. Laughter rang in her ears. Another boy kicked one of her crutches further away, grinning as if it were a game. "Come on, crawl to it. Isn't that what you do best?" Emily tried to reach for her books, but her body shook too much. Her lips trembled, but she kept her head down, whispering to herself, "Don't cry, not here, not now." Yet the tears welled anyway, blurring the edges of the cruel faces above her. Around them, other kids looked away, pretending not to see. No one wanted to be the next target. The bullies laughed louder, their words sharper, and in that moment Emily felt so impossibly small. But then the air shifted. A sound rose from the distance, low at first, like a storm grumbling over the horizon. Engines, not one, not two, but dozens. The sound grew louder until it drowned out the bullies' laughter. Heads turned as 99 motorcycles thundered down the road, chrome glinting beneath the morning sun, leather vests rippling in the wind. They moved together like a tide, powerful and unstoppable, their presence shaking the ground beneath them. The bullies froze, their smirks faltering, eyes widening as the bikes slowed and surrounded the bus stop. The engines cut off one by one until silence fell, heavy and expectant. The leader, a towering man with a grey beard and eyes that had seen too much, stepped off his bike. His vest read Iron Brotherhood, the patches stitched into it telling stories of loyalty and loss. He walked forward, his boots striking the pavement with finality. His voice was deep, calm, and carried the kind of authority that made the air feel heavier. "What did you just call her?" The bullies looked at one another, their bravado crumbling. The tallest stammered, "Nothing, we were just joking." The leader's gaze sharpened. "That didn't sound like a joke to me, that sounded like cruelty. You like picking on people who can't fight back, that make you feel big." His voice echoed in the silence, every word cutting deeper than a shout ever could. The man knelt beside Emily, his large hands surprisingly gentle as he picked up her books and brushed the dirt from them. "Here you go, sweetheart, you all right?" Emily's eyes widened. No one had ever spoken to her like that in the face of her tormentors. With kindness and respect, she nodded weakly, clutching her books to her chest. The biker picked up her crutch and placed it carefully in her hand, his voice lowering. "Don't let them make you think you're less. You're stronger than any of them will ever be." Then he stood, towering over the boys again. Behind him, 98 bikers dismounted, folding their arms, their silent stares more intimidating than any words. One, his arms covered in tattoos, leaned forward. "You wanna try that with someone who can hit back, or you only pick fights with girls half your size." Another added, "She's family now. You mess with her, you mess with all of us." The boys stuttered out apologies, their faces pale, before tripping over themselves as they fled. Their laughter was gone, replaced by fear and shame. For the first time in a long time, Emily felt like she mattered. The bikers weren't just strangers, they had become protectors in that moment. The leader crouched once more, so his eyes met hers. "Sweetheart, you're not alone, remember that. Every time someone tries to break you, know there are people out here who'd ride through fire to stand by your side." Emily's throat tightened, Why did you help me?" The man paused, his gaze distant for a moment. "Because once I was in your shoes. I couldn't walk for a year after an accident. People looked at me the way they look at you, like I wasn't worth the ground I stood on, but I got back up, and I swore I'd never let anyone else feel that kind of loneliness if I could help it." His words wrapped around her heart, stronger than any shield. The bus pulled up, brakes screeching, and every biker turned their gaze on it as if daring anyone else to harm her. Emily boarded slowly, the driver staring in awe at the sight outside. She turned back one last time, and the 99 bikers raised their hands in a silent salute. The engines roared back to life, a sound that no longer frightened her, but instead filled her with strength. The bullies' cruelty still lingered in her memory, but it no longer had the same power. From that day on, the story spread through town, how 99 bikers stood up for one disabled girl, how they silenced hatred with the strength of brotherhood, how they reminded everyone that courage wasn't about fists or power, but about standing tall when the world tried to break you. Emily walked, or rather, moved on her crutches, differently after that. She held her head higher, her smile stronger, because now, when life tried to trip her, she remembered the thunder of engines, the wall of protectors, and the voice that told her she was never alone.